MCU review. Alright, let's make this quick because I'm really tired and I honestly don't feel all that well. Avengers Endgame comes out in a couple weeks and I'm running out of time to make this video. I'll be honest, it's probably going to be out before this video comes out, but as of recording, I have not seen it. So to prepare myself for this movie, I have decided to watch every single MCU movie and review them because I hate myself. So here's how this is going to go. The movies are ranked in the order that I enjoy them and not on their quality. However, each movie will also have a rating of quality attached to it, and the rating will not be an exact number, because I don't want to put the effort or thought into it to think of an exact number. And each movie will also have a brief explanation of my thoughts on them. Fantastic. Let's get started. Up in the last place is Thor: The Dark World. This movie is really boring and uninteresting. The writing sucks, the characters are all boring, nothing really happens, there's no good action, and the acting isn't very good. For the most part, some people do okay. And they waste Christopher Eccleston. He was the best Doctor, don't at me, and you just waste him. How could you do this? God, he wasn't around long enough already. Why rub salt in the wound? 55 to 60% worst MCU movie. Iron Man 2. This movie sucks. The plot doesn't make a whole lot of sense, the writing is not very good.
I want my bird.
A bird? You want a bird?
I want my bird.
I can get you a bird, I can get you 10 birds.
My bird.
Although it does introduce Black Widow fairly decently. And the villain is pretty dumb too. There's not even any really good action, although it does have the best suit-up scene ever. It's just kind of uninteresting. 60 to 65%. Incredible Hulk. This is Edward Norton's only appearance as the Hulk, and I think that's okay. Not because I think Edward Norton is bad, but because I think Mark Ruffalo is better. Overall, the movie is not very good, although it's not terrible. People seem to treat it like it's a lot worse than it actually is. There's some decent action, some decent characters, but overall it's kinda boring and the villain kinda sucks. 65 to 70%. Thor 1. This movie is kinda really boring. The writing sucks, the action is not that good, and it's overall just boring. Nothing of note really happens except for introducing Thor and Loki. Thor is also not an interesting character in this movie, and he won't be until Avengers Age of Ultron, and Jane Foster definitely isn't either. However, this is not a terrible movie. It's decently enjoyable, but I didn't really want to watch it. I feel I would like it a lot more if the other MCU movies weren't all better than it. Well, not all, but shut up, you know what I mean. 65 to 70%. Doctor Strange. This movie is kinda boring. For most of it, Strange is an uninteresting character. The other characters mostly suck, except Wong, he's great. And it's overall not even funny, but I will say the action's at least cool for the most part, and the effects are very good. But from a plot standpoint, it's just kind of uninteresting and generic. Except for the whole thing with Dormammu, I've come to bargain. And that's one of the most creative scenes in the whole MCU, and it's a really good scene. 65 to 70%. Iron Man 3. This movie's a lot better than people give it credit for. There's not a whole lot of Iron Man action in this movie, and that is a problem. But we get to see Tony be smart. And I think that's a lot more interesting than seeing two metal cans smash into each other. I also have a very love-hate relationship with the Mandarin twist. I like the twist, a lot actually. But my problem with it is that the Mandarin was really good. Like, Ben Kingsley killed it. And the actual villain is not very good. He's boring. 70 to 75%. Ant-Man and the Wasp. I like parts of this movie, but not most of it. A lot of this movie's writing and plot are just very messy. The science somehow makes even less sense than in the first one, and that's saying a lot. The side characters are much less likable, and the ending is just blatantly lazy. I also don't like how they make Ant-Man himself, like Scott Lang I mean, a lot dumber in this movie. In the first Ant-Man, and also Civil War, he was kind of a silly, goofy character, but he was smart. Like in the first movie, he breaks into a pretty secure vault with almost no issues. But in this movie, he's just kind of dumb. And I think they do that to make Wasp seem a lot stronger than she is. And that's really stupid. Why can't they both be strong? But, all of those bad things being considered, this movie is at least funny. It's a good movie to turn your brain off and just enjoy yourself. Also, the fight scenes are really good. But most of the cool shrinky growy stuff was spoiled in the trailers, and that is very underwhelming. However, Cassie Lang is the best character in the movie. She's great, and I love her. Please tell me she didn't die in the snap. Although this movie does have two of the best end credit scenes in the whole MCU. 60 to 65%. It's okay. Captain America, the First Avenger. I like this movie, I honestly do. I think the writing is pretty solid, the action is pretty good, and there's some decent acting. However, the third act kind of falls apart. It's never bad, it just kind of feels totally different from the rest of the movie. A lot of comic book movies fall victim to this, honestly, but it's a lot more prominent in this movie than others on the list. 75 to 80%. Ant-Man. This movie is not fantastic, but that's okay. It's a pretty good comedy heist film, with some neat action and good performances. However, the villain is not very good. He's cool, but he's not very compelling. And a lot of the side characters also mostly suck. But you gotta not think about the science at all, because if you do, it'll wreck the movie for you. 70 to 75%. Black Panther. This movie is pretty good, but it has a lot of major flaws. I think the cast is pretty good and they all perform pretty well, especially Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger and Andy Serkis as Claw. They're amazing. I also really like Okoye and M'Baku. These are the 4 best characters. Mostly everybody else is pretty good, but Shuri gets a little annoying. I like her, but she's kind of annoying upon multiple rewatches.
The real question is, what are those?
Come on. Come on, baby. I just want out.
I do think, however, that there are way too many characters and they bog down the story. I think they should have cut Nakia and Wakabi. I think they're kind of out of place. Also, Black Panther himself could have been a lot better. Also, the effects, other than in Wakanda itself, kinda suck, but you already know that. It looks like an early 2000s video game. 75 to 80%. Captain Marvel. I thought this movie was pretty good, but boy did I have some issues with it. I thought the writing was all over the place for a start. Sometimes it was great, other times it was terrible, especially in regards to Captain Marvel herself. Also, the editing, especially during the fight scenes, was very messy. I also very much hated how Fury loses his eye. It really pisses me off because it makes Winter Soldier less good. But everything else is pretty good, especially performances, with particular mention to Nick Fury and Carol's best friend. I don't remember her name, but she's the best character. One more complaint though. I am not the biggest fan of the soundtrack. I think sometimes the copywritten music fits pretty well, but not all of it. I'm honestly not a huge fan of when movies try to use copywritten music, unless it means something, like in Guardians of the Galaxy, Into the Spider-Verse, or Baby Driver. Those would use it and do something with it. This movie just kind of plays it because, hey, it's the 90s, but it's not that bad, honestly. 70 to 75%. Iron Man. This movie is pretty good, although it's not like most other MCU movies. It's pretty good, but it does not represent the rest of the franchise at all. It's just tonally completely different. But it is a good movie, like, it's just a good origin story, man. It's got some good action, a decent villain, although he makes progressively less sense as the movie continues. It's just good. 80 to 85%. Avengers, Age of Ultron. People kind of hate on this movie for being kind of forgettable, and that's actually fair. This movie could have been a lot better if they cut a bit of it out and made it a bit less quippy, and also made Ultron better. Ultron's first scenes are absolutely amazing, but he gets progressively less interesting. The movie's still pretty good though, maybe not as quite as good as the first one, but I do really like it, but mostly because of Ultron's first couple scenes. Those are really good. 75 to 80%. Captain America, the Winter Soldier. This movie is pretty good. It's more of a spy movie than a superhero movie, but it's really good, and I'm not even into spy movies. The writing is pretty solid in this movie, except for Black Widow. I don't know why, but she's just really off, and I don't know why. Her writing is just different in this movie than the other ones, but I don't know. She's probably the worst character in this movie, but it's entirely a writing thing. However, the action is pretty good, and we get some badass scenes, one of which was wrecked by Captain Marvel. I really don't like that scene in Captain Marvel. It's funny, but it wrecks the movie. 85 to 90%. Spider-Man Homecoming. I really liked this movie, and for a while it was by far my favorite Spider-Man movie, but then Into the Spider-Verse came out and blew this movie out of the water. That's not to say Homecoming isn't great, it's just that Spider-Verse is an absolute masterpiece. 95 to 100%. Unfortunately, Spider-Verse is not part of the MCU, but Homecoming is still really good. The writing is pretty good, the characters are great, the action is pretty good, and it's funny. Tom Holland is also the best Spider-Man. I know that a bunch of Raimi fans are gonna yell at me for that, but Tom Holland is by far the best. He's funny, he's a good actor, he looks the part, and he's really hot, so it gets points in there. 80 to 85%. Avengers, the first Avengers. By all accounts, this movie should honestly be terrible. Cheesy writing, Disney is now involved trying to tie a bunch of different movies together, and the director is more used to TV shows, although he did make one of the best shows of all time. Or it would have been if it wasn't canceled. Sorry. Okay, I just need a second. Calm down. I'll pray to Nathan Fillion and Joss Whedon later. Okay. This movie is somehow great. It's funny. All the characters are likable and fun. Even Thor, who's the worst character. It's just a really fun movie. 85 to 90%. Captain America Civil War. This is a really good movie. The writing is good and the action is amazing. The acting is pretty good and it's shot really well. I do wish, however, the airport fight was better and more colorful. It's not bad, it's pretty good. It could have been better. The fight scene between Cap, Bucky, and Iron Man is also the best fight scene in the whole MCU, other than some of the ones in Infinity War. Zemo is not a fantastic villain, and his plan doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. But this movie is still really good. 80 to 85%. Guardians of the Galaxy. This movie is fantastic. It shouldn't be, but it is. 90% of the people had never even heard of these characters before this movie, and then they became household names immediately after. I'd heard of them, not to brag or anything, but I honestly knew nothing about them. I knew Rocket Raccoon was one of them, and there was a tree guy. That's literally all I knew, and most of that was because of the Lego Marvel Suit game. I honestly don't even like that game. It's one of the worst Lego games. Wait, what was I talking about? Guardians of the Galaxy. Right. This movie's just fun, man. Like, it's got good action, it's funny, great characters, and amazing music. My god, whoever thought of the idea of the 70s and 80s soundtrack to a crazy space movie deserves a goddamn promotion. 85 to 90%. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Personally, I think this movie is a lot better than the first one in almost every way. The writing in this movie is fantastic. The characters get fleshed out a lot more, and there's a lot of genuinely emotional scenes. Yondu's funeral comes to mind because it makes me cry, and the scene where Mantis and Drax, where they're talking about Drax's family. This is the best scene. It's really good. I don't know, this movie's just really good. This movie is better than the original, except for a few aspects. For one, I don't think the music is quite as good. It fits the movie really well, but I don't think it's quite as good. There's also just some really dumb scenes, particularly the bit where they're going through the warp gates. It's just stupid. I also hate the joke with the root thing that Blue Amy Pond wants to eat. It's annoying and dumb, and it's just not funny. But this movie is still really good, and the good stuff very much outweighs the dumb stuff, and the dumb stuff is not that bad. 90 to 95%. Thor Ragnarok. This movie is amazing. The writing, the humor, the cinematography, the action, the editing, the characters, it's just so good. The only thing I do have an issue with, however, is that the humor gets a little annoying. There's a few bits in this movie where they ruin a really good badass scene by just tagging a joke to it. Particularly the bit where Thor tries to smash the window with the ball, and where Banner jumps from the orgy ship. I don't think that it's a bad scene, but I think the joke just kind of wrecks it. Also, Jeff Goldblum is criminally underused in this movie. He should be in it more. But other than that, this movie is amazing. 90 to 95%. Infinity War. This movie is amazing. It's really, really good. Thanos is the best villain in the whole MCU, and literally only one of them comes close. I would argue that the movie itself is not about the Avengers, it's about him. I mean, look, I honestly don't have any problems with this movie, it's great. Gamora's death is the best scene, and Zoe Saldana, I don't know if I'm saying that right, she's the best actor in the whole movie. Like, she deserves more recognition for this, because she's great. Josh Brolin and Tom Holland are very close, but she's the best one. And I honestly don't have a whole lot more to say about this movie. It's really good, but odds are if you're seeing this, you probably agree with me. And if you don't, get out. 90 to 95%. And that's all of them. I can finally rest now and watch the sun rise on a grateful universe, even though nobody's going to watch this video. In short, I'm just really excited for Endgame. My tickets are booked for opening weekend. It's gonna be great. I hope. Just remember, Kevin Feige, if you mess this up, I will mess you up. That is a genuine threat. Please don't take down this video. If you want, you can subscribe, follow me on Instagram, and you can also follow my fan club on Instagram, which exists for some reason. I have remarkably mixed feelings about this. See you guys, bye-bye.